There's been a ton of shakeup around the NBA this summer, with several big-name players switching teams and conferences, other players approaching the end of their careers, and more looking to make big leaps as players. All of that, combined with the fact that the Warriors' reign as an unstoppable dynasty appears to be over, make this upcoming season potentially the most wide open and competitive in years. Not only is it more wide open for the teams competing for a title, but it's also more wide open in regards to players taking leaps into all-star status. And on that note, it brings us to the topic of today's video. Today, we'll be discussing 5 players who I truly believe have a very good chance of making their first ever All-Star game, as they appear to be primed to either make a big leap in production, or they're just in a better situation now. Before we start though, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now, with that being said, let's begin. The first player we'll discuss that I believe has a very good chance of making his first All-Star game next season is Tobias Harris of the Philadelphia 76ers. Harris has been in the NBA for 8 seasons now, and has seemingly improved as a player every year. Last season especially, he made the biggest leap to date, where in the 55 games he played on the Clippers to start the season, he averaged 20.9 points and 7.9 rebounds per game, while shooting the ball a scorching hot 49.6% from the field and 43.4% from three-point range. He was a #1 option on a surprisingly good Clippers team at the time, and at the time of the All-Star game last season, I genuinely believed he should have been included despite playing in a loaded Western Conference. Shortly after that, though, he got traded to the Philadelphia 76ers and admittedly struggled a little bit, going from a first option to a 4th option and trying to gel with new teammates in a short amount of time, all while having championship expectations, is pretty overwhelming, and he noticeably struggled to adjust. Then this summer, he agreed to a new 5-year deal worth $180 million, which definitely seems like a lot of money for someone that's never made the All-Star game, but there's a few good reasons why I think he can become even better this season. To start, both Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick are gone, and behind Joel Embiid, Harris should be one of the first options to get put into positions to score the ball this year, after those 2 other players were much more heavily favored, Redick because of his familiarity with the system, and Butler for just being an objectively better player. Plus, he now has an entire offseason and regular season to gel with his new teammates and build chemistry, as opposed to only a couple months at the end of the year like he had last year. Overall, Harris has already shown all-star caliber play, and especially now that he's playing in the Eastern Conference, I like his chances of making it. The next player on this list that I believe has a very good shot at making the All-Star game this season is Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors. Through 2 seasons, Siakam was a scarcely relied upon role player on the Raptors that didn't necessarily turn any heads, but last season in his 3rd year, he burst onto the scene and established himself as a premier forward with a pretty unique skill set. Because of his efforts and the leap he took as a player, he even won the Most Improved Player award, but he's nowhere close to being done yet. After averaging 16.9 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 3.1 assists per game while shooting the ball 54.9% from the field and 36.9% from 3, he's set to make yet another leap as a player after being a key contributor on the championship team last year. This season, the Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard is no longer with the Raptors, meaning Siakam is in for a big-time increase in his workload, which in turn should then see his production take yet another rise across the board. His uniqueness as a player comes in his speed and ball handling ability, especially in transition. He loves to run the break, and when he gets ahead of steam after grabbing a rebound, he's awfully tough to stop. On top of that, he'll probably be entrusted with more ball handling duties on offense, and the freedom to create more of his own looks will be given to him without Kawhi being the go-to scorer anymore. The Raptors may not be the championship contenders they were last season, but despite losing Kawhi, they should still be a lock for the playoffs, and Siakam is a big reason why I feel that way. The next player on this list that I like a lot as an all-star candidate this season is Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz. Gobert has now won each of the last 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and for very good reason. He's near the top of countless advanced metrics that measure how much he impacts the game when he's on the court, and the numbers jump out even more when you specifically look at the defensive end of the floor. On top of that, even his regular counting stats impress defensively, as he's been one of the top shot blockers in the NBA for most of his career, having averaged more than 2 blocks per game in each of the last 5 seasons. Last season, Gobert notoriously cried about not being named an All-Star, which, say what you want about it and make all the jokes that you want or whatever, but it does show that he not only cares about finding success, but earning the respect from his peers. So that tells me that he's going to be working incredibly hard to come back this season even better. The Jazz made 2 major acquisitions this offseason, getting both Mike Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic, and now the team is a serious threat in the West. So that means that this season, Gobert will not only have the individual impact on the game, but also likely have the team success the All-Star voters often look for when nominating players to the game. If the Jazz can secure a top 4 seed in the West, which isn't by any means a guarantee, but it is definitely realistic, then I think there's a high probability that this is the year Gobert finally gets his invitation to the game and no more tears will be shed. The next player up on this list that we'll discuss is Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks. Doncic was a heavily scrutinized NBA prospect before last year's draft, then came out and proved all of his doubters wrong. He was easily the best player in the draft from the start of the season to the end of the season, and put up prolific numbers for a first-year player in the process. On the season as a whole, he put up 21.2 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 6 assists per game, which, by the way, only Oscar Robertson ever matched as a rookie in the NBA. Doncic was a stat sheet stuffer night in and night out, and he often did it in electrifying fashion. Many people were legitimately debating whether or not his step-back jumper was as good as James Harden's, and while I still easily lean towards Harden in that debate, the fact that it was even being discussed in the first place is a testament to just how impressive and fun of a player Doncic is. One area Doncic needs to improve upon in order to actually make the leap to the All-Star game is his shooting efficiency, as he shot slightly under league average both from the field and from 3. Luckily for him though, almost every rookie guard struggles with efficiency, and those numbers more often than not improve from year 1 to year 2. Unless your name is Tyreke Evans, your rookie season is never usually when you max out your production, so expecting Doncic to take any kind of leap forward as a player is pretty fair. The toughest roadblock for him will be team success, as the Mavericks' road to a playoff spot is very tough in the Western Conference. But with Kristaps Porzingis coming back, they should definitely improve as a team, and while they still might not make the postseason, Doncic's individual production still may be too hard to ignore for the voters when it comes time to vote. Last, but certainly not least in this video of players that I believe can make their first All-Star games, we have John Collins of the Atlanta Hawks. Collins is legitimately one of the most underrated players in the NBA right now, and I'd be willing to bet if you showed his numbers to the average fan, they'd be shocked. In only his second season in the league, Collins averaged 19.5 points and 9.8 rebounds per game, while shooting 56% from the field and a decent 34.8% from 3. He's a phenomenal athlete that does a lot of his work at or above the rim, and in the pick and roll, he thrives. Last year playing alongside Trae Young, he got a ton of easy looks from those sets because Trae is a very impressive passer, and his development as a point guard moving forward is going to greatly benefit Collins as he too grows as a young player. Trae was another player that I did consider for this list, but the guard play in the East is actually pretty solid, and I can't picture him leapfrogging any of the guys ahead of him quite yet. But Collins, on the other hand, has a much better shot because he already puts up all-star caliber numbers and plays a position with a more realistic chance of getting the nod. This is another case, though, where a deterrent to him getting nominated will likely be the fact that there's not a very good chance that the Hawks make the playoffs this year, as voters tend to favor players on playoff teams. I'm really high on Collins as a player and think he will put up numbers to put himself firmly in the mix to get a serious look, but ultimately, it may come down to whether or not the Hawks at least make a push to get close to the playoffs. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who else you think may have a chance to make their first All-Star game this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.